crimes. How can they protect themselves and their health? So, according to the 2011 National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs, Hate Violence Report, NCAVP is a program of the NYC-AVP, which is the New York City Anti-Violence Project. Transgender and gender nonconforming people experience disproportionate, it's towards the end of the day, rates of violence and more severe forms of violence, especially transgender women of color. According to the 2011 NCAVP Anti-LGBTQH Hate Violence Report, anti-LGBTQH murders increased from 27 in 2010 to 30 in 2011, an 11% increase. This reflects the highest number of murders ever recorded by NCAVP. 87% of all murder victims in 2011 were people of color. Yet, LGBTQH people of color only represented 50% of total. Survivors and victims, 50% of total survivors and victims. 50% of murder victims in 2011 were non-transgender men, 40% were transgender women, 7% were non-transgender women, and 3% were gender non-conforming. Transgender women were also, I can never get this word, supervisor, disappropriate. There you go. There you go. She's awake.
Disproportionate?
She's awake. I saw you knitting over there, nodding on. Murdered only representing 10% of overall survivors. Transgender people were 1.76 times as likely to require medical attention as compared to overall survivors and were 1.67 as likely to experience police violence. Transgender people of color were 2.38 times as likely to experience police violence and 1.85 as likely to experience discrimination. Most impacted by hate violence in 2011, transgender people were 1.58 times as likely to experience injuries as non-transgender people. People of color were 2.84 times as likely to require medical attention and 3.13 times as likely to have been injured as a result of hate violence as compared to people who did not identify as people of color. Transgender people of color were 28% more likely to experience physical violence compared to people who were not transgender people of color. Transgender people are more at risk for severe violence and discrimination, but less likely to receive law enforcement assistance. Transgender women are particularly at risk. The breadth and severity of violence reported by transgender people in 2011 highlights the specific vulnerability of transgender communities, particularly in contrast to overall sample. Transgender people were 1.74 times as likely to experience discrimination compared to non-transgender people. Transgender people were also 1.58 times as likely to experience injuries because of hate violence. Transgender people were 1.76 times as likely to require medical attention due to hate violence as compared to the overall sample. Transphobic discrimination could be a barrier to accessing law enforcement assistance and medical assistance. Transgender people were less likely to receive hate crime classification from police and more likely to experience violence. Transgender people were 45% less likely to see police classify their incident as a hate violence compared to non-transgender people. Transgender women were more likely to experience harassment and sexual violence. NYC AVP statistics in 2011, AVP saw a 13% increase in reports of hate violence from LGBTQH survivors. A slightly higher than the 11% increase we saw from 2009 to 2010. AVP saw more transgender and gender nonconforming people and more people of color reporting this year alone. reflecting the national trend. The number of reports from survivors who identify as transgender increased by 69% in 2011, compared to 2010, 49. Staying safe and the impact of hate violence on the physical and mental health of transgender people. Number one, use safety plan with them. Call ABP's 24-hour hotline. We are bilingual, as you can see, I speak bilingual. So you can also report online. We have ABP's Hate Violence Committee. Also ABP Speakers Bureau. We also assessing safety when reporting. To the police is very important. We also have individual and group counseling and connecting to additional resources, including health, mental health, and legal services. Did y'all get that? Y'all got that?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a lot to take in.
A lot to